more on form over function, and Facebook gets out of podcasting. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Get important, timely, and relevant security recommendations for your Mac right inside Slack. Try all of Kolide's features on an unlimited number of devices free for 14 days, no credit card required, at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the second part of a MacVoices Live conversation. The first part got pretty intense, and the second part is as well. We were covering form over function and questions over Apple's current iMac designs and MacBook Pro designs in relation to Jony Ive leaving Apple. Then the panel turns its attention to Facebook and podcasting, or Facebook's departure from podcasting, and what it potentially means. And that led into yet another discussion. Let's go back and let the panel do the talking.
The whole thing about we're making the compromises now between the aesthetics and the functionality, I'm okay with that. But at the same time, while my Macs are a tool, these are tools that I want to look really good. I have a computer that sits on my desk and I see it all day, every day. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I want this thing to look sexy.
I'm with you.
And my computer sitting here, it looks sexy. And I don't want that to change. So I guess that means I'm willing to make a few compromises. Just so that I can have the aesthetic to go along with the functionality. Like having an Ethernet port on the power supply for a new iMac. Okay, well, it's plugged in. I'm never going to need to move that cable. Well, okay, I will need to move the cable, but most people, you plug it in, it's out of the way, they never see it. And that's that. It's fine. And if I had one of the new iMacs, I would like that. Because that means that if I have my iMac sitting in a place where you can see the back of it, there's less junk dangling off the back. And
dongles.
I feel the same way about myself.
Yeah, nobody wants their junk dangling.
Nobody. I don't want junk hanging off my back either.
See, and you know, and even with my setup with a jillion cables, and my desk pushed up against a wall, I'm still doing stuff to try and make the cables that are visible less cable-y.
I show off my Apple products like to the public all the time to impress people. That's why when you go to Starbucks, everybody has an Apple product because they look better, and nobody wants to be that person with the Windows of the laptop. And
except you.
And with the pandemic and everything like that, we haven't been able to show off our devices. So we have all these beautiful computers here, this studio, and nobody's seeing them, which is a shame. But Apple has really good looking products. People ask me as an IT person all the time, why do you use Apple computers and products all the time? Because I'm good with computers. I can fix any computers and I could own anything, and understand it and not break it. And I say because they are great looking machines. They're very solid, but they are attractive devices. That's why we flaunt them out. And you don't flaunt out much other technology that I know about. So, Apple products. That's why we have the reputation we do, because we like to show off our Apple products, and we should be fine with that.
Yeah, but Warren, I take a bit of issue with we buy Apple products because they look good. We buy Apple products because they work. We like them to look good. But I didn't buy a new MacBook Pro because it looked good. I bought it because it did what I wanted it to do.
Function over form.
With a Windows computer too. It's a preference, and the Apple computer looked better, and yes, it's built better. But a Windows laptop and an Apple laptop will do what you need it to do.
No. A Windows computer will run Windows. Not what I want it to do.
That's not an answer.
Yeah. It is an answer.
Well, that's your answer. Fine, that's your answer. But a Windows computer that runs Windows, if you understand Windows and worked on it, you'll find a way to do anything a Mac could do that a Windows could do. Does it do it as well?
No.
I guess, well,
No, I'm about to.
Especially when it comes to things like audio. We don't talk Windows here.
Yeah.
Does a 2020 Surface Pro Studio run an audio recording or hacking software better than the 2012 iMac? Yes. It depends on what you're comparing. I mean, there's ways to do that. But I'm not saying. But I'm just saying I'm agreeing. We like Apple. We like Apple because I'm agreeing with Jeff because they're good-looking products.
Well, if that's the reason you buy them, great. Then why the devil did you buy a Windows laptop today?
It's actually
it's only $500.
Yeah.
Actually, really.
You bought a. Oh, I come
looks
in
sort
late
of like a MacBook Pro.
and have a Surface.
Surface.
Yeah, I know.
Mics are sexy. Computers are not sexy. Mics are sexy.
Laptops are.
Oh Lord!
I find laptops.
I think on that note.
That ends that discussion right there.
You have no idea the amount of self-restraint I am exerting right now.
Two elderly men are having fetishes with electronics, good-looking, sexy electronics. Guy being the mic and me being a laptop, and that's okay. And we could be okay with that.
On that note, we're moving on. I'm shutting this down because Jeff can't hold it back much longer.
Oh, you have no idea.
Just keep your pants on, Jeff.
Yeah,
pants.
I do.
Pants.
So let's turn to another one of our favorite whipping boys, and that's Facebook. Facebook announced that they are bowing out of the podcast market after only 1 year in the podcast market, if you can call them being.
Who didn't see that?
Facebook was in the podcast market.
I forgot they were in there. Like if I'm in, out of all of us, I'm in Facebook all the time. You guys make fun of me, and I've never seen a podcast. I've never even seen an area to see a podcast. Where do you go,
Warren? We don't make fun of you about Facebook.
Here.
Guy, I have an answer.
I've seen you share In Touch with iOS because the podcast comes up in Facebook.
Do you?
Yeah,
but is that a face? I thought that's just linking. I didn't.
No,
I thought that was just
Facebook.
linking to.
That's actual Facebook. So
Warren spends lots of time in Facebook and doesn't understand how to use it. Apparently,
I know how to use it, and I see people posting podcasts like you and Dave, but it's basically just you're sharing.
No, that's Facebook generating that.
Really,
Guy, I have the answer to your question, which was who didn't see this coming.
Yeah,
and the answer is everyone that didn't even realize that podcasting was the thing that Facebook was doing.
Exactly.
Those of us that knew it was a thing, we were just counting the days until Facebook made the announcement that it was gone.
Well, Jeff, I don't know about you. I mean, I looked at it the way they were implementing it, and I couldn't. It was not easy to understand, and I couldn't figure out exactly what value it was going to bring.
Exactly
to me as a podcast publisher.
The potential value as a podcast publisher is exposure to audience that you wouldn't otherwise have. But the reality is the people that are looking for podcast content weren't looking for it in Facebook. They already knew where to go find shows. And for them, Facebook wasn't the place.
The part of the problem, one thing that Facebook does well in regards to media is, and I'll give them props for it, Facebook Live. Facebook Live is a free, very easy to use platform for putting out live content. And I use it at least twice a week myself for a show that I won't discuss here right now. But most people, if they are listening to podcasts, already have an aggregator that they prefer, and that's where they're going to go to find their shows. And if all Facebook was doing was going, hey, you can show that you have a podcast by bringing it over here to Facebook. I mean, there were already so many different solutions to do that it was irrelevant. One of my favorite words tonight, apparently, is irrelevant.
That seems irrelevant to this conversation.
I think it is too.
And I've been looking at the numbers of my podcast, and it's top 5 as far as people have been listening to the show, and which is strange.
Facebook is
the Facebook external link. Yeah.
I mean, what's number 4?
It was.
But Dave, are you upset that they're shutting it down?
No, I'm not. It's fine because there's plenty other ways of doing it. I mean,
but you got some exposure. 6? I mean, as far as you know, those came up on Facebook. They did it. You had no interaction with putting that there, right?
It just link it.
I mean, for you, it was almost like free ads, right? You didn't do anything.
It wasn't huge numbers, but I mean,
even if you did nothing, you literally did nothing, and you could have had, even if it was 1 or 2 or 3 people. So
number 6, Dave?
If Facebook had really wanted to be serious about this, they would have offered free space for podcasters with podcasting portals and all the rest of that. And basically all they did was go, hey, bring a link over here. So if you want to get content creators' attention and you want to generate ad money or, get data from it because that's what Facebook does, then you offer the same thing that they are currently paying whoever it is that's hosting their service for free. You say Facebook is going to provide you with audio and a video portal, and here's your page, and here's all that stuff that you're using your current provider for, and we're going to give that to you for free and give you some advertising and all the rest of that. And all they basically did was just provide a place to send links to. So, the fact that it failed miserably was essentially almost written on the wall from the very moment that they announced it, because they just didn't seem to be that serious about it.
But, Guy, though, you bring up an interesting point. From the creator standpoint, I'm thinking about it from the audience standpoint, that there was never anywhere. I mean, look, I listen to most podcasts on my phone. Okay. And there was never an easy way for me to look at Facebook and say, oh, this is where my podcasts are, hit that button and have them play. So I agree with you completely. I mean, if they would have been given free hosting space, they would have had a chance to make a big dent in the market.
Or at least bring in a lot of people that make content.
Yeah. Now, though, and I think Dave's situation is really interesting. And I want to dig into that for just a second. Dave, can you explain? You actually connected you and I, well, scratch that. I put links to the shows on Facebook and I upload the videos to Facebook. Okay. But I never did go and link the audio version in Facebook. Is that what you did?
That's what I did. Yeah. That's
okay.
I linked it because they gave you. That's when they first came out. That I said, all right, why not? I'll link this, and this is an Apple Pod. It's Facebook podcasts, but it comes up as as the algorithm brings up the post. I would see my post once in a while, and Warren would see it because I saw him like it. So I mean, it's just the way that Facebook grabbed it and its algorithm and how it would show that content to somebody. But that's how it was linked, and sure enough, I'm looking at my numbers, and it was number 6. I mean,
can I ask a quick question, just real fast? So, what do you care? I mean, if there was 100 of these hosts like Spotify and Facebook, what would we have against not having all of them have this show? I mean, you're not paying.
No, I don't. I mean, we don't pay
anybody. So. Yeah. So who cares how they run? As long as they're putting eyes on some of the services and you're not paying for it. I don't understand the model of who's making money off what. And I understand podcasts have to take space on a server somewhere. And that's what it costs.
Yeah, hosting costs money.
That's what people say. Hosting costs money. You're renting space on a server and equipment, obviously, and things like that. But what is Facebook, Spotify, the list that Dave put in the chat, Amazon, all that?
Those are
what are
that's ways of people are listening. I mean,
that's just more people. So for as a podcaster, I might hate Facebook or Twitter or whatever, but if they are advertising my show and I didn't do a thing, who cares? I mean, you're getting all it's doing is it's not hurting you. It's not hurting you if you put, let everybody out there who has a podcast service. How's it hurt you?
Well, that's kind of what's going on now anyway. I mean, I didn't specifically go to a lot of the different services that link back to the My Mac podcast or Guy's Daily Drive. They just showed up there because they've got bots running around and crawling around and finding the links to all this stuff and then grabbing an RSS feed. So
that's what you want.
Sure. And that's fine. I'm not complaining as long as they're not breaking up my show and putting ads on it without my consent and without compensation to me for it. I don't care if they host an RSS feed and the people that use that service listen to it through it.
To me, it's free advertisement. I mean,
okay, so guys, let's try not to talk over each other. It really makes a mess of the editing. Warren, I kind of think you're missing the point. There's one reason I wouldn't want that to happen, and that is if they take my file, host it themselves, I never see the downloads, and therefore I don't know. They downloaded once and then they distributed 500 times. That's 500 downloads that I didn't know I had, and that's 500 downloads then that I, can't take credit for if I go for sponsors or anything like that. That's one of the problems with it. Today's Mac Voices is supported by Kolide. Get important, timely, and relevant security recommendations for your Mac right inside Slack. Kolide sends employees important, timely, and relevant security recommendations for their Linux, Mac, and Windows devices right inside Slack. How convenient. Kolide is perfect for organizations that deeply care about compliance and security, but don't want to get there by locking down devices to the point where they become unusable. The more you lock down, the less usable the devices are, the more discontented the employees are, and the more they try to work around the lockdown. Instead of frustrating employees, Kolide educates them about security and device management while directing them to fix important problems. Kolide knows that end users are one of the most significant untapped resources and a key to solving the most challenging security issues. By involving users in the process, they are both educated and empowered to solve problems like setting passphrases on unencrypted SSH keys and uninstalling browser extensions that may be selling the browser history out the back door. Want to know more? Visit kolide.com/MacVoices and try Kolide with all of its features on an unlimited number of devices for free for 14 days, no credit card required. And be sure to enter your email when prompted to receive your free Kolide gift bundle after trial activation. That's kolide.com/MacVoices. 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 Thanks to Kolide for supporting this week's Mac Voices.
Well, a good chunk of those 500 new people that you don't know about came from them, advertising.
But apparently he does know about it because it's showing up in the statistics that his host is giving him.
Right. If that's the way they were doing it. This has been a controversy that's started out when podcasting was young. And I think they stopped.
Does that even matter if you don't? I mean, again,
it matters very much.
It matters in the podcast as far as statistics, but you're still getting. It's like the leak Tommy and Lee tape, right? At one point when they duplicated it, it just keeps going, and the value goes down. But
no, it's not like that because they weren't monetizing the tape. So if you're in a situation where you don't,
with the fake, with the people were copying them on the streets. I saw that.
Okay, so
they were copying VHS tapes.
Okay.
So Tommy Lee was not monetizing that. Okay, so now let's say Tommy Lee was monetizing that, and now all the people are making copies out on the street and selling that. He's not getting the credit for all of those watches and views and listens.
It wasn't Tommy Lee. It was the guy who stole the tape.
Okay, you're hooked on the wrong part of this. Totally hooked on the wrong part of this. The part of this that matters is someone creates the content. If someone else is now like grabbing it and restreaming it for them, like the example Chuck gave, a streaming service just grabs the files that Chuck has made, and now they're doing their own hosting and streaming. Chuck gets no credit for those views. And while the people are getting to see the content, and that's great, the value for Chuck is actually zero because they're not seeing it through Chuck's hosting, which means that there's no data to show those people are engaging with the content, which then means that when Chuck is ready to go and look for new advertisers, his actual viewer number is much lower than what it really is.
Can I just say?
And it's actually worse.
No,
than
Jeff
that.
he was.
Go ahead, Warren.
I equated podcasting to like upcoming musicians, right? When they release something, they hope it jumps out to as many people as possible, no matter whether they get the royalty for somebody coming to their site and whatever, going and getting it. That's how they become famous. That's how they get, that's how aspiring creative people get up to a level they want to be. My point is, what's more important, the hits that you're getting on your site, or somebody else might have stole your hits, or or MacVoices being sent on to people that would not have gotten the message without what's going on.
Here's the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Chuck.
No, go ahead, Guy, and then I'll.
Here's the difference. When upcoming bands create a record for distribution for advertising the band, they're hoping to get a deal from a much larger company that's eventually going to make them a lot of money. What these guys are doing is they're taking, say, Chuck's content off of his RSS feed, creating their own RSS feed and distributing it that way. Not only is Chuck not getting any credit or any views that he can see from them, but if for one reason or another they drop Chuck's show, they quit the RSS feed that they were using to distribute Chuck's show, now all of those listeners, as far as they're concerned, Chuck's show no longer exists. And to go back to the music analogy, if someone was recreating those demos and putting them out, fine, that's getting them advertisement. But the moment they get that big record deal and they try to do the same thing, they're going to get their asses sued from here to infinity, because it's not only not just the band, but it's whoever it is that's distributing that content that now they're not getting the money. So follow the money. The whole point is if you're changing the RSS feed, if you're changing the RSS feed,
okay, Warren, let Guy finish.
If you're changing the RSS feed, then you're essentially stealing the content. For good or for ill, you're stealing the content, and whoever it is that created that content likely won't even know that you're doing it unless someone points it out.
It's a balance. What's more important, the chance of that, we're getting more eyes to look at you and spreading the word, and then maybe one day, Spotify comes to Chuck Joyner and says, Chuck, like Joe Rogan, we want you. And that's how things happen.
Except Spotify is going to look at the number of downloads off of Chuck's RSS feed, not the RSS feed that somebody else is using that has taken the content and is distributing it in a different way.
I mean, that Spotify had to have some idea of what Rogan's reach was before they approached him.
Oh, of course.
But the hits on the website isn't everything. That's why is Facebook doing this? So people who are on Facebook see these podcasts and they could connect with other people who might like it.
Yeah,
that's what
except
happened with
Facebook
Joe Rogan.
Wasn't doing this. This is. I'm not sure where this is even coming from, because we haven't discussed any service that is doing this stealing. Facebook apparently isn't, because Dave is seeing the hits off of there.
He's with his own RSS feed.
So it's a credible service.
right.
He's getting the.
What service is doing this? We're having this long discussion about, with no specifics, that there's somebody doing this.
Well, I don't know that anybody is at this point, Jim, because for a while, Apple was even accused of doing that. And in the early days, there was actually a benefit to them doing it, because then I'll take mine as an example. If they cached my podcast, they could distribute it 1,000 times, and I would only get charged for one download. And that's back when bandwidth was really expensive. And you could, if you happen to get fireballed, which was the term that was used, for it was used more for websites. But if John Gruber posted your podcast or your website, your host could melt down because of the traffic. And the same thing with podcasts in a different way. Right. That if my podcast, if a particular episode got really hot, then I might end up with a bandwidth bill of a few $1,000s. And so that was a trade-off then, but that part has gone away. But I think Warren's missing the point Warren's kind of missing here is that it's like everybody comes and asks you, if you'll work for free, Warren, you use bands as an example. Okay, if you'll come and play at my nightclub every Friday night, you'll get great exposure. I'm not going to pay you for anything, and I'll make all the money on the drinks and the admission, but you'll get great exposure, and maybe one day you'll be able to play Madison Square Garden.
That's what
not going to work. Yeah, but you can't. But the number of times that. Yeah, but the number of times that happens, Warren, is just unrealistic. Meanwhile, thousands and thousands of bands starve or go out of business because they can't make a living.
Yeah,
you can't make a living.
A lot of famous bands will tell you, I started out at this stupid place that paid me.
Almost every band started out that way. But the problem is, for every band that makes it, there's 1,000 others that didn't, using that same method. Right. Free exposure doesn't put food on the table. It doesn't pay the rent.
This is why everybody in the world is not a famous musician. We're a famous actor or a famous podcaster is because, that happens.
The difference is that situation is done with consent. Nobody, the bar owner says, I'm not going to pay you. And the band says, okay, we'll play anyway. The situation we're talking about is there's no consent. Somebody's creating content. Somebody else is stealing it. They're not asking, can I steal it? They're just stealing it.
Yeah.
Going back to Facebook. Facebook is one of, I look at my list. I have 94 different sources that my host is telling me that can listen to it, and I'm sure Chuck's in the same boat. Okay, so Facebook is getting out of this. Okay, is it gonna hurt me? No, I think if anything, now people are going to go to other places to listen to podcasts, even if they were using Facebook as their means of listening to it. With Apple Podcasts, Amazon, Overcast, all those places, even listen to it on the web. A lot of people listen to podcasts on the web just from their browser, right from their iPhone or any other mobile device. I mean, you got so many ways of us being able to listen to podcasts these days. It's crazy. I'm just looking at my list here, and I'm even realizing. Some of them are very single digits, but 94 different sources of places that I'm not sure. I'm sure most podcasters are out there that there's a place where people are able to listen to what they want. With Facebook going away, I honestly don't care.
And the common part of that is your RSS.
Exactly.
Right.
And so if one source goes away, it doesn't matter because everybody else is playing on the same level ground.
So
now, where does it matter?
What service was Facebook offering that they're now discontinuing?
The ability to be able to play a podcast from within Facebook. So it's basically.
So did they have a directory in Facebook?
It was a service that you would link your podcast to, and it would just list it, just like how they post everything. When I'm looking up something, and all of a sudden I got ads for crazy amounts of things that I had just looked up. Same thing with podcasts. If you're looking up a specific thing that, in my case, iOS, then it may come up in the algorithm, or that player or that ad more or less comes up, say, hey, here's this podcast. If you're following it, you can listen to it. It's just basically a player that linked my RSS feed within Facebook and being given the ability to be able to play the show.
I don't use Facebook, but there's a timeline, right?
Yes,
So
it comes up in the timeline. Right.
It shows up in the timeline. So, and presumably you have to subscribe through Facebook for it to do that. So they had some way that you could go and
You
say,
have the
"Here's all
option to subscribe
The
if
option.
you want.
Yes.
here's a list of a catalog, and I
Yeah.
can go in and subscribe just like I do on Overcast."
Sure.
So they
And many of the
built a
others out there.
podcast player into Facebook.
Yeah.
And now
Right.
they're removing it.
Or an audio player that runs off of an RSS feed.
You know, they put pretty graphics, and it's.
But you're saying
it
it's
plays and all that stuff.
it's part of the timeline.
Mhm.
So it's
Which
not
makes
like
you
Well, the part that's kind of different is typically you can't put an audio file on Facebook. If you want to put a pure audio file on Facebook, you have to kind of turn it into like a movie file or something like that, even if it just has a still image on the back of it. Because for one reason or another, and probably for copyright purposes, you can't just post audio files on Facebook as pure audio files.
Our discussion of podcast statistics wraps up in the next edition of MacVoices, and then we take on a host of smaller topics. Everything from iOS ad blockers to some AirTag adventures by the panel and some domain name fraud. That's all next time on MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner. I hope to see you then. Thanks for watching.